This episode is brought to you by thebabatradingco.com. Every journey begins with the bag you pack. The Men's Rise bag is smart, sleek, and sophisticated. Let us help lighten the load. Visit us now at thebabatradingco.com. That's THEBABA tradingco.com.
Today on the Chat and Chew Show,
received a lot of accolades there, and meanwhile, she met a priest and her counselor. I think she was having some family challenges even back then as a teenager, so she sought out this priest who was her counselor that she had known since she was 14. And as she was seeing them, as things progressed, eventually it led to a relationship. Well, it led to a sexual encounter, basically. I like to think as a child that it was a relationship, but I've learned later that that was kind of a fantasy. It wasn't a relationship. So.
There's nothing like a father's love. That's why many who have had to grow up without a father present experience such a profound void. But there is hope. Today on the Chat and Chew Show, we sit down with public speaker, pastor, and devoted wife and mother of four, Christa Armstead. Christa's faith is at the forefront of her life as she and her family work hard to serve those less fortunate in their Sacramento community and beyond. She has built a platform through one of the largest churches in California, Bayside Church, as well as through her family's numerous professional athletic associations with both the NFL and NBA. You may have heard of Christa's son, Arik Armstead, professional football player for the San Francisco 49ers. Christa's upcoming memoir, entitled Finding My Father, chronicles her life as the daughter of an African-American teenage mother and a white Catholic priest. Christa's father was in his mid-30s when he discovered her mother's pregnancy and abandoned both Christa and her mother. Christa's birth occurred at a time in America when babies born to unwed mothers were considered illegitimate, and biracial marriage was a crime punishable by law or worse in many states. Today, we'll walk through Christa's healing journey and learn how she discovered a love that finally filled the void that her biological father had left behind. Chat Tribe, you won't want to miss this story of triumph.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chat and Chew Show. My name is Betty.
And I'm Roxanne.
And we say this every week, but we are super thrilled that you have clicked on to join the Chat and Chew Show. Yay! Celebrate you today. That's what we're doing. And as you know, this show was designed to empower you to do your relationships better. And we're in all types of relationships, not just romantic, but we are mothers and daughters and aunties and uncles and whatever else category you fit in. And so we want to be able to give you tips and things to think about so that you can do your life and your relationships better. And the goal of the show, again, is that you go out there and you enjoy your life and thrive in your relationships. Today's show is going to be special, and I say that every show, but it really is. It really is. Go back and listen to all the other episodes, but we have a special guest on with us today. But before we start, I always like to talk to my co-host and find out what is happening, Miss Roxanne. What's happening with you, Roxy?
Not that much. I'm having a very average time this week.
Okay.
Nothing exciting to report. Well, and I don't know. I love this time of year just because I love fall, the changes of leaves, all that kind of stuff. And then leading up to the holidays, it just, I don't know, it just gets me in the whole mood of family, fun, like connecting with everybody, that kind of thing. So I'm excited. Yeah. How about you?
I love the fall. You see, I got a jacket on. I just love it. It's like, yes, I can wear my jackets and sweaters now. I hate being hot. I'm in the house with a jacket on, so that tells you. But so yeah, that's right. The holidays are coming up, and speaking of family, we're going to talk to a guest today who has a very interesting story that kind of mirrors mine. And I almost don't want to give it away, but I not long ago just met my father. And I'll tell you guys the story one day, but just our guest today has the same experience. And so we want to be able to talk to her about how that was and how she's navigating that relationship now. So if you are in a situation where you are like, I don't know my dad, I don't know my mom, I don't know either of them, and you're still experiencing pain around that, this is going to be a great episode for you.
All right, everyone, welcome back. As Betty mentioned, we have a special episode as always, but we're excited as always to talk to Christa Armstead. Christa is not only a speaker and author and a pastor, but also mother to NFL football player Arik Armstead as well. So, Christa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Roxanne.
We're excited to have you because you just have a lot of depth to your story, because people can be like, oh, she's the mom to an NFL player, but no, it's like you have your own great story as well. So we want to talk to you about your memoir that's called Finding My Father. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so basically I think I've wanted to write this memoir 30 years ago, but as it is, you need to mature, you need to grow, and you need to process. But just the memoir is basically about my search for my father. And growing up without a father, to me, and to our listeners, was just very significant. It had a huge impact on my self-image, on my self-esteem, on my identity, on everything. To me, it impacted every area of my life. And so from a child on, I just remember how lonely I felt, how unprotected I felt, how, like I said, how that impacted my relationships with men later on in life. I was always looking for this affirmation, looking to be affirmed, looking to be loved. And I think because I didn't have a father, those were some of my challenges and struggles throughout my life until I came to this certain point. And so I don't want to give that all away right now, but yeah, for most of my life, I just struggled with why, God, don't I have a father? Why don't I have a daddy?
You and I have a similar story, except I had a stepdad growing up, and we grew up in a time where they were like, don't ask any questions.
Right.
You don't ask questions. You just,
Right.
this is how it is, and don't ask me any questions. So I got up enough nerve to ask questions. But I'm wondering for you, what made you decide, like, I need to find more? Like, first of all, how did you even know that you didn't have a dad? If that makes sense, because when you're younger, you don't know, because this is what's normal in your house. How did you know?
Right.
First of all, I don't have a dad.
I'll go back and just share. So my mother was, I was born in 1967. So this is the 60s, in the heart of the civil rights movement. My mother's African American, and she was really bright. And so she was maybe one of 5 students at the time that went to this very affluent high school down in Los Angeles area, in Pacoima, in the San Fernando Valley. And so she was selected to go there and thrive there, and received a lot of accolades there. And meanwhile, she met a priest and her counselor. I think she was having some family challenges even back then as a teenager. So she sought out this priest who was her counselor that she had known since she was 14. And as she was seeing them, as things progressed, eventually it led to a relationship. Well, it led to a sexual encounter, basically. I like to think as a child that it was a relationship, but I've learned later that that was kind of a fantasy. It wasn't a relationship. So my father, the priest, and my mother's counselor and my mother's mentor goes to my mom at one point and says, I think I'm in love with you, and that God is okay with our love. So they consummate this relationship.
Wait a minute. Let me get clarity. So the priest says to your mom, who was then in college.
No, she's in high school.
She's in high school.
She's his high school student. Yeah, she's not. She's a high school student at a high school, a pretty prominent Catholic high school in Los Angeles. And I think it still is there today.
Okay.
So she'd known him since she was 14. She's attending the school. She's super bright, like Stanford bound. And she's receiving a lot of accolades and a lot of attention. And she's under some stressors too, being one of few African-American students in this all-white, school, trying to fit in, and probably issues with her own identity. So my father begins to mentor her and recommend her for special awards. And so anyway, that later turns into, I guess, him desiring her sexually. So they have this encounter, and my mother thinks that my father's going to leave the priesthood and he's going to marry her. And that doesn't happen. Instead, when she finds out she's pregnant, she goes into a home for unwed mothers, and she's supposed to secretly have this baby and give me up for adoption and go on. And that's what they did back in those times. You would go to these homes, you would have the baby and come back as if you were away on vacation.
Mhm.
The only thing was that my mother knew that the baby she was carrying, me, would be biracial. And back then, like you said, secrets, when you adopted back in the 60s, you adopted to families that you could blend in and, could pass for, you could pass for their child. And
Mhm.
so she thought, okay, if I adopt her out to a white family, which was likely to happen, what if she looks, African American later on? If I adopt her to a Black family, what if she looks more white later on? And so she decides to keep me. And my father comes one time when I'm born to see me and is very upset with my mother for not following through with his plan, which was give this baby away, keep this secret, and keep this, hush hush for many
Wow.
years. So, and then fast forward, my mother after that had a nervous breakdown. So I really lost mom and dad. I really didn't have a mom or a dad because my mom was just really, really emotionally, traumatized after that, experience, and never really recovered from it, I would say. So,
Mhm.
so just again, back to your question, I think I went around your question, but to me, I was aware very early on that I didn't have a father. I can't say exactly when, but I just remember I had cousins, first cousins, and they all had dads. And it seemed like my friends around me had dads. And I just remember not having a dad. And then one day, my mom didn't tell me this story about my dad. My aunt, who raised me, so when my mother would have her quote unquote spells, she'd have these periods where she would go away. Her two sisters would take me in. And my aunt, my aunt's pretty sassy, and she'd say, let me tell you about your daddy.
Okay.
Let me tell you about your daddy. So
Uh-huh.
one day she tells me that story. She said, your daddy was a Catholic priest, and he would have the nerve to come to our house and put his feet up underneath our table. And my grandmother, she said, my grandmother just adored him. Having a priest back then at your house was like tantamount to a spiritual blessing for the whole family.
Wow.
And later, some years later, I think they figure out that the priest is my father, because my mom wasn't dating any other,
So
young
how
man.
old were you when your aunt told you or started telling you about this story?
I think I was pretty young. I think around 7. I know that 6 or 7.
Oh my. How
Yeah.
could you take that in as a 6-year-old? You're like, what? What?
No, this is gonna sound so strange too. Like, you guys remember the movie The Omen? Damien the Omen.
Mhm.
So that was the impression that I had of myself. I thought, my aunt told me this, very sassy. She's like, let me tell you about why your mom is the way she is. And let me tell you what's happened to your mom. And let me tell you about your daddy, who was, who, they kind of despised at that point. So I think she thought she was helping me.
Yeah.
But so it was good to kind of know why my daddy wasn't around and everybody else's dad was around. She was like, your dad was a Catholic priest, and so he's somewhere hiding. But it did kind of mess me up, because I thought, I must be the devil's child. Like, who has a priest for a father?
Yeah.
That whole thing was pretty messed me up pretty bad in
Yeah.
my earlier life. So
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm hearing both that just the issue of not having a father and that protection and everything, but now there's also like shame attached to it because
right.
of who he actually is. So that's a lot to take on as a child. And you said it played out in later relationships. What did it look like for you once you did start dating and things like that?
I think it just always, even before I was dating, even of age to date, I think for me, it just made me look for affirmation even in young men that were not, mature enough to affirm me. There was always this sense of needing to be affirmed, needing to be feeling loved and feeling rejected. So I think that was that just plagued me throughout my life until years later when I became a Christian and I started, discovering that God loved me the whole time. And so that's basically what the book is basically about. You find out early on in the memoir that who my father is. I kind of disclose that. Then I go on this journey of all the different things that I tried or attempted, or the different places that I tried to fill this hole of finding my father, and for some reason, just if a boy even liked me, I thought, oh, I don't know, just I sort of tried to fill that hole with that, with affirmation from.
I can so relate to that. I'm just listening to your story, and mine again is similar. My father wasn't a Catholic priest though, but just what you feel as a person who doesn't know their father. It's like Roxanne, you grew up with your dad. So it's so hard to explain this, but it feels like you're not a person. I don't even know how to. It's like I'm not a person, even though you are a person, but I'm not a person. And I remember just knowing what his name was. It gave me this sense like, oh, okay, well, maybe I am a person. And then when I actually saw him with my own eyes, I was like, I am a person.
I'm a person. Did you look like him? Did you look like your dad?
I look exactly like him.
Me too.
Off air, I will tell you who he is.
Okay.
You would probably.
I think that you hit on something. It goes deeper. Like, not only are you not a person, you don't have value.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, everyone else has value. You don't have value. Why would the people, the two people that are supposed to love you and affirm you and grow you and would be your mom and dad, so not having your father, I think I just always had in the back of my mind, was I not valuable? Was I not lovable?
Yeah.
And so that played out in a lot of areas in my life and I think even to this day, I still sometimes, there's just there's a little voice in the back of my head that has to resist that. It's just like, you're not enough.
Yeah. And you're right. It can play out in other relationships. Like, depending upon the story that you tell yourself, it could be like, well, every relationship I'm in, they're going to leave me.
Right.
And so then you do stuff to sabotage it to make people leave you. Or if I'm not valuable, then I'm going to just take whatever trash that comes along because I'm not worth anything either. Right. So then, that kind of thing.
So I took a lot of trash back in my
day.
I took a lot of trash back in the day. So.
I think because I was so scary, I didn't go down those routes too often. Like if I saw danger, I'd be like, oh no.
I guess I was pretty gullible because it's like a lot of things, there's a few things that I write about again, in the memoir about just things that I was basically left unprotected because again, as I'm growing up, from time to time I would be with my aunts, but you live kind of in your head, there was no place to process these feelings of like, can I talk to someone about how I'm feeling rejected? Can I talk to someone about how I'm feeling unloved? I just went through life trying to figure things out in my own mind. And and that didn't work out so well sometimes when you relying on a teenager to fill that void.
Yeah. I think a lot of times too, we often, I think when we're going through things, we think we're alone anyway. Like we think we're the only ones, even if someone has the same dynamic, we just don't think they're experiencing it quite like we are. And so we tend to like do things alone. But I did have a question, and maybe actually both of you can answer because you're both Christians. And I guess I'm wondering, especially even for the person at home, like what was it that may not be a believer? What was it about Christianity and learning more about God that helped to fill that void in particular?
I think for me, the biggest thing that I was looking for was love. And when I was, when someone introduced me to the love of the Father, it was just such an aha moment for me. It was just such an aha moment of someone loves me. You mean I'm not reject? I'm not, and so it's like, this is what I've been longing for my whole life. So that was my feeling of what I experienced in becoming a Christian. It's just, there was, hearing this story that there is a father. So first I'm looking for a father and like, God is a father And not only is he a father, but he's a loving father, you know.
Yeah.
And he receives you just like you are, with all your scars and all your wounds and all your baggage, just loves you. And I thought, this is the message I've waited to hear. This is what I've longed for my entire life. So that was my experience.
I think for me, love is important, of course, but that's not what I felt. I was sitting here trying to think. I was like, maybe that I belonged,
Mm.
that I am now a part of something bigger than who I am. Because I think for me, like you said, I never put it together. It's like maybe I didn't feel like I was worth anything, because the only way I was able to describe it, I didn't feel like a person, but maybe that's what it was. And I felt like now that I'm in the family of God, I'm in this big community it's giving me value. I don't know if that makes sense. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what a father was until I met my husband. He's
Wow.
not my father, but I've watched how he has fathered.
Your
And I'm
children.
like, okay, I get it. I get it. And God is a trillion times more than that, you know? But yeah, I think for me, that's what.
And I
Nice.
think like you said too, I think I do struggle kind of, it took a minute to understand a father, because I'm connecting my earthly father with my heavenly father, so to just come to learn that he wasn't, that he's reliable, that he's faithful. And again, like, he loves you unconditionally. He'll never leave. And you know what? Even people who, my husband is an amazing father, right? And we have 4 children, and they've only grown up with the mom and dad. But guess what? Earthly fathers are still flawed,
Right.
so that's something that I've come to understand too. And all that I was searching for this father, and maybe I fantasized that it was going to be perfect, right? But still, in his humanness, even if he had stayed, he still wasn't going to be able to fill necessarily the void that God the Father can, can fill. So
that's good. Well, it sounds like you're on a journey of healing. I don't know if you ever totally like, I'm healed and free now. Everything is perfect. Because sometimes that's the image that we give off, especially as Christ followers. Like, yes, I'm the head and not the tail, And we don't talk about those times when we like crawling up to be the head,
right.
And then we slide back down and we're the tail,
Right.
So you wrote a book, and the name of the book is Finding My Father. And is the book out yet? Or are you still
not out yet? A few months from
Okay.
From I think spring of 2022. So
okay, good.
we're in we're in that process. So
Good.
and I think I wrote it because I wanted to just share my journey. I think my life now is so vastly different. So if you didn't know, like you said, people see you on stage, people see you in ministry, or they see you as a believer, even if you're not in ministry, and they probably think, oh, life must be perfect, especially for me. One time a gentleman at church introduced me to his friend, and he says, oh, this is Pastor Christa. She didn't have any problems. Her son is in the NFL. And I think that's the image that he had. And I'm thinking probably a lot of people think that. They think, oh, if you have status, or even if you're a pastor, you no longer have any problems, and life is just grand. And so I think I wanted to share my story to say, hey, no, I've had a journey, and it's been a process, and it's the same process that, we go through in life of healing. And I'm still healing. Like I said, today, I still sometimes fight that voice in the back of my head that said, are you an imposter? Who told you could write a book?
Oh my gosh, I struggle with that so much. Like, I'm trying to tell myself, we are sisters for real.
Right.
I
Roxanne, I don't know, maybe I feel like I've always felt like growing up without a father, this is part of this, why I've struggled with this. Roxanne maybe can tell us.
Yeah, Coach Roxanne. Growing up with no father, imposter syndrome.
I'll be honest with you guys. I think that there's always a reason to feel like you're not good enough, or that you don't fit in, because I grew up with a father, and the feelings that I don't know what it's like to not grow up with a father, but the feelings that you guys are expressing, I've definitely felt throughout my life. Like, I've literally struggled for most of my teenage and young adult years, thinking that I was not a real person, not worthy of much. And I had a father. I had two parents in the home. So it's like when I hear you talking about, I'm like, man, there's really always a reason to not feel good enough. You know,
Wow.
I think it's just part of the human experience, and we all have to figure out how to make the best out of the hand that we're dealt, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I had a question for you, Christa, because I'm just curious about the situation with your father and him being a priest. Was there any rebelling against religion because of that situation?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for many, it's a strange kind of a thing. Well, definitely my mom left the Catholic Church. We were Black Muslims. I was raised as a Black Muslim from the time I was 5-ish until 12 years old. So that's a whole other story. And I remember, just, thinking there must not be a God. And if there is a God, he can't be very good or kind or loving, because why am I in this situation? And it wasn't until, but also too, I had these moments, right? Just moments when I look back in life. Like one of the moments was, I don't even know why, but when I was in the 6th grade, I had a friend and her mom was Catholic. And so her mom used to go to mass. And so one Sunday I told the friend, I said, let's go to mass. Let's go to church. I borrowed a dress, we put on a dress, and we end up at this mass. And it was like, maybe I was trying to connect with my father. I don't know. It was the strangest experience. And then later in life, friends would invite me to church until this moment where I'm in college and our neighbors invite my husband and I, which wasn't my husband at the time, to go to church. And that's where, kind of had this aha moment. But up until that point, I didn't, I was angry at God, I think, for the hand that I was dealt. I didn't like the hand that I was dealt. So.
Yeah. Wow. So we can't end this episode without you talking about your son, because I'm sure people always bring him up. How did you raise a person to be in the NFL?
Oh, wow.
It's huge.
Well, first of all, I have to give a lot of credit to my husband, who's a great father. We actually have 4 children. They're all super amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2 kind of musician, kids who were interested in music, and we had 2 sons. I have another son who actually played in the NFL as well for a short stint, and then he had a medical condition that had him retire early. But I want to just give the credit to my husband, and just being, he gives the credit back to me.
Okay.
I just think, faith, and we tried to raise them with the understanding that whatever they had in life, that God had his, I guess, because I grew up not knowing that, it was really important for me to instill in my kids early on. You have a purpose. You're not an accident. You're meant to be here. God has a plan for your life. Yeah. And God wants, when you grow up, you're going to figure out what that plan is, and God's going to use you greatly. So I've always kind of told them that since they were little kids, and then reminded him, because he's been good at sports for a long time. And I said, when you get where you're going, just remember, you have to look back. It's God's blessings on your life, and it's not just for you, it's for you to share. So I would say faith has been the biggest thing.
That's good. That is good. Good. Well, this was a fantastic episode. It's so good talking to you, Christa. We got to get you back, especially when the book comes out.
The book releases. Please have me back.
Please hold up the cover.
Please have me back.
Cool. So are you on social media at all?
I am. I'm on Instagram.
Okay, tell everybody where they can find you and follow you.
Oh boy, just Christa Armstead for my Twitter, and for my Instagram, it's just Christa Armstead. So
okay, are you active on it? Because a lot of times we have one, but we're not really active.
I'm active on my Instagram. I'm learning Twitter. Okay. My kids are trying to help me with Twitter, but I am active on my Instagram. So.
Oh, tell us how old your children are. I didn't get that.
Okay, let me count back. Well, I'll say. I know, because their birthdays are so close. So my oldest was born in 1988, so he's 34. Okay. And I had my second son was born in 90, so he's right behind him, 32. And then my daughter Alexis was born in 92, so I was like, whim. And she's turning 29. And then Arik's birthday is next week, so he'll be turning 28. So they roll over, like they change.
Right.
So, and then we have 5 grandchildren.
Oh, congratulations.
I had 3 granddaughters born during COVID.
What?
Really?
Right. Had 3 granddaughters born during COVID. So
Wow.
I feel very blessed, feel very fortunate.
Would you say you like being a grandmother better than a mom?
Oh, well, are my kids going to watch this episode? I mean, I look at my grandchildren and I just think, I know I loved my kids,
Yeah.
but this is just a whole different level of love.
Yeah. I cannot wait. My son just got married. He's been married. I remember he's 26. Yeah, and he's been married like 2 months. And we're like, they didn't. So funny. They didn't have. This is gonna be funny. I hope my son don't watch this. But they only had like an inflatable mattress, and my husband's like, I want to buy them a bed. He's like, you want grandkids, don't you?
Well, I gotta buy them. I don't think they need a special type of bed, though.
Right.
With
Man.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
About?
I'm trying not to press them, but I'm like, they only been married 2 months. I'm just like, oh, I can't wait.
Well, I'm just so thankful for you beautiful women.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous. And then just thankful for sisterhood and, grateful that we continue to lift each other up. As Roxanne said, yeah. I think that's, so awesome to hear from her that there's always a reason for us to think we're not enough. I just thought it was because I didn't have a father. So it's, encouraging each other as sisters to say we are enough.
Yeah.
And tell our stories and walk the walk and live empowered.
Yeah.
Yes, and
I think telling our stories is huge. It's huge.
And I love your healing stories. So I really can't wait until your book comes out. I'm really excited for it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, definitely keep us posted.
Again, I'm like, pressing past that voice that says, who are you to think you can write a book? I'm like, I'm going to write it. Yeah. And somebody's going to publish it. And somebody's going to read it and be blessed, hopefully.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much, ladies.
Yeah. So, Roxy, tell everybody where they can find us.
Yes, you can find us at Chat and Chew Show on Instagram or Facebook. And also, if you're on YouTube, subscribe wherever the button is. Find it. Let me know where it is. And also, you can click on the bell to get notified whenever we have new episodes. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time. Bye.
This episode is brought to you by the Chat and Chew Company, host Betty Jones, and co-host Roxanne Brew. Today's producer is Danisha Norwood Smith. Original theme music by Elwood Jones and Roxanne Brew.